was a pretty busy week for Nintendo all the way around. They had their investors report that they put out for their holiday season, which is the Switch 2, of course, being the big story there and how it did at retail. We also had the Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase, and to cap it all off, we did have the official release of the translation for Q&A with investors, and investors kind of grilled Nintendo. It seemed like about one specific thing, and it kind of makes sense when you just look at it from their perspective. But I wanted to go over some of the Q&A here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. Now they did ask, I will say, which we'll get to, about the 40th anniversary for Mario, but and Zelda, but also Pokemon with the 30th anniversary. So there were at least some questions around around that, but man, I was going through and like if so here's Nintendo stock. I just want to give this as context going into it. While many of you I'm sure don't necessarily care about stock market, where Nintendo is right now and stuff, you have to kind of view it as who's asking these questions. Okay, well, investors who have a bunch of money tied up in Nintendo, will say, or at least a large stake in Nintendo, who are watching these charts consistently, are in attendance asking questions with Nintendo. So think about it from the perspective of they've kind of watched the company, I mean, down technically down 23% for 1 year. So this is going all the way back to then February 2025. But they've seen the highs and now kind of the lows, even again over the last month, down 15%. But it was they were soaring high during the Switch 2 buildup and release. And to be honest, like a lot of the stock market right now, it's been kind of crashing down. Currently, a lot of value has been extracted out of many different companies across the board, but that does include Nintendo as part of it. But here's the Q&A with investors asking all kinds of different questions. But as I was going through this, and I picked out 5 different questions to take a quick look at, they were all sort of getting at the same thing. And at times it felt like they were kind of grilling Nintendo to get some kind of answer out of Furukawa, since the whole thing right now with the market is uncertainty typically will lead to some large investors getting a bit skittish with leaving money in any one company, and at times will kind of take their money out or take it off the table and then hang out and wait and see for more clarity from the marketplace. So what you're about to see with some of these questions does make sense, despite them kind of hammering over and over and over again, trying to get something. So to start, the first question is just if a price increase is on the table. Like, if the cost of components remain high, is there a chance of a price revision? That's very important right now with the Switch 2, because as it gets more expensive, it's just going to be more difficult to sell to people. Here's the thing though. Shintaro Furukawa did talk a bit about this, and as we went along, he kind of put out little bits of information, a bit more and a bit more. Okay, so he says, as a result, the recent rise in memory prices did not have a significant impact on hardware profitability in the third quarter. In addition, we do not expect any significant impact in the fourth quarter. We're in that quarter right now. That'll end March 31st, 2026. New fiscal year starts April 1st. Says, however, if this rise in component prices lasts longer than expected and runs through the next fiscal year and beyond, it may put pressure on profitability. If the situation deteriorates significantly, we will carefully assess market trends and respond. For any future change in the price of Switch 2 hardware, no decision has been made at this time. Any decision to change the price will be determined comprehensively, taking into consideration not only profitability, but also factors like the platform's install base, like where they are in terms of how many systems they've been able to shift to consumers. And I do think they would look at that more in the sense of sell through as opposed to sell in, because they still need to sell them off of store shelves. So while there may be like we'll say a 2 million unit buffer, as we saw in their latest financial report, they still have to account for if tomorrow the prices went up $100, those will also be difficult ones to sell through to consumers. All right. So there is a lot to take into consideration when you make moves like raising prices on some of these consoles that for Nintendo have typically been viewed as a more approachable device. Sure, from the family standpoint, like just as a general audiences thing with some of the games that they make, but also as an affordability at like part of it, to where their systems don't tend to be stupid expensive. All right, so let's move up to question 4. Now, in this one, they ask about hardware profitability and prioritizing adoption rate or profit. And that is a tough one, because we see these companies come to the market with systems that they may take a loss on initially, but they know in the long run, because the generation might go 6 or 7 years now, they'll make up for it on the back end of the generation where they will sell that person software after software after software for big releases. And I mean, that rings the truest with Nintendo because their first party offerings are what people typically look for. And for Nintendo, they tend to be the most profitable. So they need a lot of people around to buy those games, right? So Furukawa says the current rise in memory prices is happening at a pace that exceeds our expectations. In general, the profitability of hardware tends to improve with economies of scale, and we want to continue to reduce costs as much as possible through mass production of Nintendo Switch 2 hardware. So, we talk about how many Switch 2 systems Nintendo has been shipping out. And I do wonder if that. So when we get the projections for next fiscal year, that'll happen probably in the first week of May when the next report is. I kind of feel like they're going to stick around, might be around 19 million again, only because they have to buy tons and tons of components to make the math work out on the back end, right, for the costs. So in this case, with regard to not selling hardware at a loss, what we are focusing on is profitability on a global basis. There are various external factors such as fluctuations in exchange rates, but looking at the global picture, we have traditionally tried to avoid situations where individual units are sold at a loss as much as possible. And I mean, he does say it's difficult to predict the changes in the external environment that are currently taking place, but I think it is not an appropriate approach to be excessively influenced by short-term trends. Second and third years for Switch 2 are very important. We can expand the hardware install base, but we can use that as a basis to greatly expand software sales. And I mean, that's the thing. They say year 2 and 3 are very important, and yeah, I mean, because eventually you get to a point where the hardware starts to slow in terms of sales, and you kind of just decline year over year. Doesn't mean you can't still sell a ton of systems when it's all said and done, and you look back and you're like, oh wow, we did get to 110 million or something. But there does come a point where you peak, the console peaks, and then it just kind of dips down from there, right? So that's something they would need to be very careful with, especially as the Switch 1 phases out and they don't have that floor level price. Okay, so question 5. You probably guessed it. Will rising memory costs have an impact starting with first quarter of next fiscal year? I mean, they are very concerned about price increases behind the scenes with some of the components that are going into the Switch 2. Again, they are just hammering Furukawa with these questions about it. I mean, they're like long questions too. I mean, they're trying hard to just get something out of him here. He says, as mentioned, we do not disclose details about individual components, but we work to secure stable supplies of memory components by holding discussions from a long-term perspective with our business partners. As a result, we expect that the recent rise in memory prices will not greatly impact the financial results for the current fiscal year. Furthermore, due to our inventory on hand, together with hardware currently in production, we do not anticipate an immediate impact in the next fiscal year. However, if the rise in memory price continues for longer than expected, it may start to have an effect on hardware profitability, and they can decide what to do from there. The good news, though, is much like we heard from Sony recently, it appears, based on what's being said here by Nintendo and Furukawa to investors, so he's going to try to be roundabout with his answers to not give too much away, but he can't just outright make stuff up and like lie to investors. So the read here, I think, is that Nintendo has procured X amount of parts for the short term, but then also X amount of contracts for, I'd say, longer term, as in maybe the next year to year and a half, where they at least have a price that's locked in that will keep them around where they are now. Okay, so the issue they can run into, of course, as he mentions, if the situation continues to deteriorate faster than they're anticipating now, then they could be put on their back foot. And that would be something similar to Sony or, anyone else in the market. The fact that Nvidia is looking around going, well, we might not have another video card until 2028 is insanity. And that just kind of shows you, I think, where the market is and what they're dealing with right now. But also why investors are so concerned and keep asking about pricing for the Switch 2 and profitability around the hardware and just like their strategy going into the next year. Okay, so here's the good news. As I scroll all the way down, again, kind of passing redundant questions based on pricing and hardware availability, we do have one that's about their strategy right now when it comes to the big screen with the Mario Galaxy movie in April. But what I do like here is this investor asked a very good question that had to do with that Pikmin short movie. Do you remember that? The Close to You video that just kind of appeared. People weren't really sure what its purpose is necessarily. They're like, I mean, I guess that's cool. Okay, great. And then Nintendo kind of moved on from it, and we didn't hear anything else. Like people were wondering, is this leading to a new Pikmin movie, maybe a series, a game? Like, is it eventually just going to go, oh, yeah, this is the intro to the next game or something like that? They say the company that produced Close to You, a Pikmin short movie released last year, is Nintendo Pictures, a subsidiary of Nintendo. Until now, we have not had the opportunity to share the company's activities, but we believe this short film has been a good way for many people to learn about this initiative. We believe that there are many options for video content beyond the kinds of feature films that are released in movie theaters. If these initiatives can bring joy to our fans and simultaneously raise the value of our IP, we believe they will become valuable long-term assets, so we will continue to challenge ourselves with new initiatives. And this is actually, so we look at Nintendo as the company that would still have an active fax machine consistently for sending out what would be an email or something, as a joke. It's like that's Nintendo. This to me feels very like for future facing, the idea that there are many other avenues to reach people outside of just let's get together and make a big Mario Galaxy movie. They do that still, but remember when they put that out there, that Close to You short film, they did it in waves. The first one, it looked kind of weird and people were trying to figure out if it was Pikmin, and you saw the conversation and the intrigue that it led to, and then they released the same thing but with the Pikmin in the video, and people were like, oh, that was kind of fun, I guess, but it got people talking about Pikmin, and in Nintendo's mind here, just raises the value of the IP in like the public spotlight. So it's interesting that that is just a strategy they have, not necessarily to put it out there and let's sell this video content outright for 20 bucks or something. We have a whole series that we'll do. No, let's put this out there, and it'll just remind people that we're still a thing, and we're still doing all these other parts outside of games. So that's pretty clever. Again, good idea by the investor to at least ask about that, because I wasn't even thinking about that Close to You video, but it does at least give some insight into maybe Nintendo's thoughts around not only social media, but just video distribution beyond just the big screen. So the last question, and it's a good thing they got this one in there, because, this they ask about, of course, the Super Mario Brothers 40th anniversary that Nintendo has been they're referencing for a while now. They have releases around it, merchandise, games, the whole thing. And who knows, maybe it'll culminate with a big 3D Mario on Mario Day. And hey, it's coming out this holiday. We'll see. But the other thing, we have some other anniversaries. Legend of Zelda, 40th anniversary for that one. And then we have Pokemon. They even say Pokemon Red and Green. We knew green here as blue. This is the way it was in the US. But red and blue, that's a big deal. In Japan, again, it's 30th anniversary, so they would recognize it as green. Either way, big deal for Pokemon to have its anniversary and heavily highlighted. And they ask, are you planning any special promotion activities that utilize these IP assets? Furukawa goes into like typical salesman for the first paragraph or so, just explaining all the cool things they did with Mario. Then he just leads into, right now we don't have anything specific to share about initiatives other than the 40th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers. But hey, 40 years and even 30 years, man, that's a very long time period. We are incredibly thankful that consumers all around the world have loved the characters of this series for so long. We'll do our best so that they endure even longer. So we have the Zelda anniversary is coming up here in a couple of weeks or something. And I don't know if it's gonna be the exact day that it came out in Japan or what have you. I don't know if they're gonna do that exact day. They'll probably put something out on social media. They're doing something for the Zelda 40th anniversary. I believe they are. I don't know if it's a game release, all kinds of merchandise, remasters, whatever. I think something is happening. But Pokemon, while Zelda is, of course, a big deal, Pokemon is the one that I'm sure it is ringing up dollar signs right now for the Pokemon company that Nintendo's part of. And we know that Pokemon Day is at the end of this month. And look, investors know it too. It's biggest property in entertainment or what have you is Pokemon. So they know it too. Even though Nintendo is part of that equation with the Pokemon company, them Game Freak and Creatures, I mean, just a part of a massive pie is still a big part. That's something I'm sure that they wanted to get an answer out of. And Furukawa, of course, sidestepped the question completely and pointed to the Mario anniversary, which they referenced but weren't necessarily asking about. Still, though, there's been rumors going around about there being like a Pokemon collection, which I would buy day one if it was even the first three and the option to do green as well, and maybe some fun cut content thrown in there. And there's some cool stuff they can do, but will they? Because to me, one of the easy things for them is to make a whole new card set, do Gen 10 Pokemon that'll probably blow up online, and then throw all kinds of other plush and merchandise to the Pokemon fandom that absolutely will buy that stuff in droves. But this was a look at their Q&A, and typically there is at least a range of questions and topics. Not necessarily this time. Again, it was very focused in, as you'd expect from investors with a company who's part of a stock market plunge right now, asking around what's next, what's the future for this hardware that you're coming out of its first holiday period, going into year two in the next holiday period. What's the strategy around rising costs behind the scenes? Because I want to make sure we have that all squared away before they get blindsided by some craziness with AI data centers all over again. But I would say in that case, Nintendo certainly got grilled about it. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.